Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Usually, I'm stronger than this. When it comes to the weekly episode drops, I always try my best to avoid all spoilers, as I want to go into each episode as fresh as possible to get the true experience. But when I saw this post by Arturo Plateado on Reddit this morning, efficiently breaking down leaks and impressions from the early screening of episodes 27 and 28 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime that took place, I think, last night or so at the time of recording, well, I couldn't resist. I'm only human, and I think we are all in the same boat at this point. I'm so ready for Cour 3 to arrive next month, though definitely less than a month to go now, and so, just this once, I thought I'd take a peek. And I was terrified that I would regret it, but thankfully it wasn't anywhere near as spoiler-filled as it perhaps could have been. But there is plenty of interesting stuff in here. And so I wanted to share these leaks and impressions with you along with my thoughts and feelings as we descend through this list. Once again, this post was put together by Arturo Plateado over on Reddit, and I'll put a link to the post in the description and the pinned comment of the video, so you can check it out as well. And a big thank you goes out to them for doing such a fantastic job at collating everything in one place. In terms of spoilers, there doesn't seem to be anything truly explicit in here, which is good. It's mostly just alluding to things happening, but still, you've been warned ahead of time. Though the title of the video literally says spoilers, so if you're here, I'm guessing you don't mind. Anyway, let's get on with this. Where possible, I want to try and break down when and where I think certain things are happening based on the chapters or which chapters should be featured in the first 2 episodes of the Cour, though there's not a lot of room for maneuverability where that's concerned. Anyway, before we get started on the video, guys, once you're done with the video, if you liked it, if you want to see more from me and the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, as it really does help to support me and what I do. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started taking a look at some of these pre-screening early impressions, leaks, and new information. So the first few impressions and reveals are regarding the new opening, which I can't wait to see. I've always maintained that while I like both openings for the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, I prefer Scar on the whole, both the song and the visuals, so I'm hoping this one leans a little more in that direction. We got a brief taste of the new song Without Any Words by Six Lounge in the last major trailer for Part 3, and I already think it sounds great. But anyway, these are the first impressions as written up by Arturo Plateado. They showed the opening during the pre-screening this time, while for the Cour 2 pre-screening they did not, which may indicate production is going more smoothly this time. Okay, so that's promising, and I believe it's been noted before that Cour 2 suffered from more than a few production issues throughout, and the prevailing thought this time seems to be that Cour 3 has managed to avoid much of that, likely due in part to the longer wait time between seasons here. Next is a great piece of insight. Grimmjow appears in the opening chasing Askin. Kubo commented that he thought that it was a cute scene. So here we have what I suppose would be considered the first big reveal, and I have to say I am really happy about this. I was hoping that Askin, my boy, would have a decent presence in the new opening, and it seems like that's going to happen. Of course, Grimmjow chasing Askin is probably one of the funniest moments of this part of the story, and I think that's going to translate really well to an opening. It's interesting, though. I would argue that that is definitely a spoiler of sorts for new viewers, though ultimately if you don't know what's coming, what really defines a spoiler? What really is that moment with no context behind it? I'd argue the biggest spoiler is likely actually seeing Grimmjow in full. And in that sense, it's funny the anime has tried to hide his overall appearance so far, only to then reveal it a few episodes early in the opening itself. But Bleach openings have always been kind of spoilery. They've always teased battles to come. Just look at opening 12, for example, which basically spoiled much of the Fate Karakura Town arc, including Espada Resurrección, before it even happened. I think it just needs to be viewed through the lens of someone who has no idea what's coming, and it must mostly just appear like colourful noise. Finally, Arturo Plateado notes that everyone seems to love the opening. Multiple people said it made them cry, and the opening has a distinct Bleach-like feeling that differentiates it from the previous Cours. Both of these comments are quite interesting to me. I feel like it would take a lot for an opening to actually make someone cry, so it must be pretty special. The idea, though, that it has a distinct Bleach-like feeling that separates it from the openings of the previous two Cours is interesting too, as I feel like the openings for both Cour 1 and 2 actually reflected both halves of what an orthodox Bleach opening can be and usually is. By which I mean Scar was the more traditional and serious Bleach opening featuring multiple fight scenes and different characters all coming together, while Stars reflected the more colourful side of Bleach, showing characters in everyday wear instead, which is again a trend that pops up a lot, specifically in outside supplementary artwork and material, though also it happened in one of the older Bleach endings too. So maybe this new one combines those two halves somehow. Okay though, but with that out of the way, we now move on to the impressions and leaks regarding the first two episodes themselves, and some of this we already knew. The anime original battle between Senjumaru versus Uryū continues in episode 27. So the trailers had hinted at this already, but it's also noted that there is an amazing Uryū scene that may take a few rewatches to truly understand. And I really wonder what this could be. What could be so obscure and potentially complex as to need multiple rewatches? In the comments of the original post, multiple posters, including Arturo Plateado, note that the amazing scene likely has something to do with the shot of Uryū from the most recent trailer, where blue veins seems to emanate from his eyes, as it's also noted that Uryū's glasses are special depending on the translation. So look, I really have no idea what that's all about, and it's very intriguing to me. As I mentioned before, I think way back, well not way back, but I think back in episode 24 I believe it was, we also see Uryū preparing for the battle ahead by activating what appears to be Blute in his eyes, and his eyes alone. But I wonder, what about that, and maybe what its true nature is, could be so abstract as to need multiple rewatches? Either way, I can't wait. Perhaps the manner in which Uryū defeats Senjumaru is a bit confusing, as I'm still assuming that's what's going to happen. But up next, there is a lot of praise for Ichibei and Yūhabaku's fight scene, and again, I'm very happy to see this. While I, of course, adored the new additions in episode 26 that really fleshed out the Zero Division versus the Schutzstaffel, perhaps one of the biggest changes I feel the 1000-Year Blood War arc needed all along, and I certainly wouldn't trade it for anything, there's no denying that Ichibei versus Yūhabaku was somewhat pushed to the wayside in order to accommodate it. So, if the fight is given the respect it deserves here as it comes to an end, I'd really appreciate that, especially since the end of their fight is, in my opinion, the weakest part. And certainly the snippet we got of Ichibei using Futen Taisatsuryo last week looked absolutely next level. Now, up next is a simple one. Aizen is confirmed to appear. Now, presumably that's talking again about episodes 27 and 28. He's confirmed to appear in either one or both of these episodes, but it's very interesting either way. Aizen doesn't make his actual return. You don't see his face in the manga until chapter 617, which by my count should be approximately episode 29, though potentially the very end of episode 28. especially if there is plenty of new content being crammed in here as well, meaning the chapter count might be reduced overall. It's possible Aizen appearing out of the darkness of Muken before Kyoraku is the cliffhanger of episode 28, though if it isn't, and he does appear early, this wouldn't be the first time the anime has shown him in a new scene. If we take what I used to deem to be the sweet spot number of chapters covered in an average episode of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, 4, and roughly equate that to the first 2 episodes, then it does actually kind of work, with episode 27 roughly covering chapter 609 through to 613, and episode 28 covering 614 to roughly 618. But of course, that's only an extremely rough estimate on my part and may very well be completely wrong. The sheer amount of new content making its way into episode 27, for example, means the chapter count might be dramatically reduced, throwing this all out the window. It's then noted that Ichigo versus Yhwach, a fight we've seen a fair bit of in the trailers, happens in episode 28. Now, this fight only really gets going in chapter 615, after Ichigo cuts the Soul King in half. And wow, the Soul King really isn't going to be around for very long, thinking about it. Is he really only going to appear in about 2 episodes of this entire thing? So then, looking at this, it is highly possible the end of episode 27 is Ichigo attacking and cutting REIO'S in half, and then Ichigo versus Yhwach takes center stage in episode 28 with some new scenes sprinkled in to boot. And speaking of which, the next 2 points are oh so very exciting. The name of that person was casually revealed in episode 28, and more details are given on the Soul King that makes Yhwach's motivation a lot clearer. Arturo Plateado theorizes that person to be none other than REIO'S himself, going back to a comment made by Kubo, I believe it was, about whether or not we would hear the Soul King's name. And all of this is music to my ears. It seems likely that Yhwach will probably realise that Ichigo saw visions of what became of the Soul King during his training on Irazu Sandor, and then go into a little more detail about his father, giving us some insight into, hopefully, the life and times of REIO'S, his fate, and even perhaps giving us his name, which is crazy to think about. Now, I mean, I would love a full flashback dedicated to the Soul King, and whether or not we get that, I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, if episode 28 or even 29 was a Soul King heavy episode, a whole episode dedicated to the truth about the Soul King, you can bet I would be more than happy with that. And on top of that, one of my biggest, most enduring criticisms of the Thousand Year Blood War arc was that Yhwach's motivation was kept almost entirely hidden until the very end of the arc, which just made no sense whatsoever, gave no context to his actions. Now, the anime has already made great strides in making his motivation more pronounced and more relevant than ever, and it looks like that is set to continue, which is great news. Now, next up, Arturo Plateado notes that Yhwach has a scene reminiscent of Elsa and Thermarome. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what this meant, so I did a quick bit of research, and Thermarome appears to be a manga series about an ancient Roman architect who ends up being transported to the modern day, only to then bring those modern ideas back to the past with him. So I could be completely off base. I wonder if this means we'll see Yhwach in ancient times 1,000 years ago, perhaps, or if we'll see the proliferation of modern technology throughout the Lichtreich and how it came to be, such as how that Quincy girl was wielding machine gun, for example. Either way, I'd love more flashbacks for Yhwach, so whatever this means, I'm down for it. Of course, if you have a better idea, I'm sure you probably do, please let me know in the comments below. Up next, we get a few blanket statements about the Cour itself, both of which I think we had a good idea about already. The first being there's more CGI usage in this Cour, and the second being there are so many new scenes that were not in the manga. The more CGI is to be expected, and I think some obvious focal areas will be Pernida and probably the Soul King's power, as was glimpsed briefly in the last trailer. But we see CGI used in scenes like Ichibe's Futen Taisatsuryo, and to be honest, it was barely distinguishable there and actually looked really good, adding to the scene on the whole, as that sequence where all the skulls appear and seemingly rush towards Yhwach wasn't present in the original chapter. I'm mostly just hoping the likes of Pernida are equally impressive. That's the main thing I've got concerns about. It's when entire major characters involved in big fights are created entirely from CG that I'll reserve judgment for. And then of course regarding the new scenes, well again we kind of knew that was going to be the case and have done for some time. In fact, it's probably what I'm most excited for. One such new scene is a new Renruki interaction, which apparently was quite long. And I kind of wonder when this takes place. I guess it could be before the two of them arrive at the Shinigami stronghold, as we see in chapter 612, as that's really the only time they're alone between now and basically the end of the series, but I guess we'll see. Either way, apparently fans of both Ichihime and Renruki will be happy, which tells me they are setting up the final relationships in a big way, in a fairly big way, before part 4 rolls around, which makes a lot of sense ultimately. Anyway, supposedly the overall quality has improved from Cour 2, which again, I'm happy about. Truth be told, I didn't have too many quibbles with how Cour 2 looked for the most part, though episode 21 was kind of ugly from an artwork perspective and really stood out to me among the rest. As mentioned in the last trailer reaction though, part 3 is already looking leagues better. Each staff member present then picked a character that we as viewers should be paying attention to in the third core, with most of them making a lot of sense. Tominaga picked Ukitake for pretty obvious reasons. The same goes for Murata, who chose Uryū. Takahashi picked Ganju, which is an interesting one. Not only does Ganju not really do much from this point onwards, but he kind of disappears once the battles in Varvelt really begin, kind of after Kyoraku activates Bankai. I don't think we see Ganju again until Chad faces off against the statues. So I wonder if maybe the team has made some moves to rectify that. Kubo himself chose Basby and Hashwolf, which makes a ton of sense. Not only is the Friend Saga going to be a huge part of this core, but Kubo has already gone on record before expressing his fondness for that mini-arc and how emotional it really is. I think we can expect big things from that sequence of chapters, to be totally honest. However, the strangest pick, in my opinion, comes from Taguchi, who chose Hyosu, the high-ranking, alien-like individual of the R&D Institute. What's weird about picking Hyosu is that, well, he simply doesn't appear in the source material at all here. In fact, after his appearance in chapter 547, which was in episode 15, he never appears again in the source material until the epilogue. So this feels like a very conscious pick, and picking Hyosu as a character that we should be actively paying attention to implies to me he's going to have more than a little bit to do. It's not just going to be a background cameo. Is Hyosu going to appear in Nemu's flashback? Is that what this is a hint towards? Or is there something else going on here? The next point reads, Taguchi and Murata said they were happy that the episodes were completed with no production issues. The promotion of Taguchi from director to chief director helped to increase manpower. So it definitely seems like they've learned from whatever hardships they experienced during the production of Cour 2, and Cour 3 will be all the better for it. Another point states that Kubo cooperated with the anime staff a lot and drew up draft manga pages for multiple scenes, like he did for Senjumaru's Bankai battle scenes. He felt that just providing concept art alone didn't make much sense, and Taguchi said he would be grateful if Kubo kept sending them. This is exactly the sort of thing you want to hear as a fan, and is exactly the kind of collaborative effort that will continue to make this adaptation special. Senjumaru's bankai is one of the craziest, most incredible and unbelievable new additions we got, and Kubo's draft pages were likely invaluable in achieving the desired effect. Plus, from my perspective, they themselves were just awesome to see. Whatever new pages he's created here, again, I hope they are shared publicly eventually. It also makes me wonder what new sequences we have that might be on the same scale and complexity as Senjumaru's bankai as to need essentially storyboarding by Kubo. However, interestingly, it seems this cooperation goes both ways, as the next point notes that not all new scenes are from Kubo. The anime staff also gave suggestions for scenes they wanted to be added. Kubo was grateful and approved most of their suggestions. I wonder if we'll ever know which were the new scenes pitched by the rest of the team. But regardless, I love the back and forth going on behind the scenes. It definitely sounds harmonious and conducive to a good working environment where both sides can get their best ideas across. And again, it just fascinates me to know what the anime team felt so passionately about that they actually pitched an idea to Kubo himself, and he liked it to the point where it was included. As we near the end here, it's noted that Chiaki Matsuzawa, the woman who hosts Crew B Inside, asked if there will be new scenes between Baz and Yugo in the anime, but her question was avoided. I've said it before that I would be more than happy if the Friend saga was extended. What I want most from that is new scenes featuring past versions of some of the other Sternritter, but I'll obviously take new scenes between Bazby and Hashwolf as well. And finally, Kubo praised Masashi Kudo's drawings, and again, if you follow Kudo on Twitter, for example, you can see a lot of their artwork there, and it really is incredible stuff. A collaboration was also announced, but details were not provided, and apparently Kubo wore a Black Hole Disco Club t-shirt and orange sneakers, and somebody says that he looked cute. But that's it for the current leaks and impressions coming out of the early pre-screening of episodes 27 and 28. If anything else of note is revealed, I'll do my best to share it with you here. I have a feeling we're going to be pretty busy soon regardless, as things seem to be really starting to ramp up, not only around Cour 3, but also around the 20th anniversary of Bleach animation itself. But that's it from me, guys. Once again, another thank you goes out to Arturo Plateado for compiling all of that into a very digestible way over on Reddit. And I'd love to know in the comments below, what are you most excited about to see in Cour 3? Have any of these leaks and early impressions got you excited? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. While none of it was too explicit in what it spoiled, some things definitely have got me very excited, particularly knowing that there will be more stuff on the Soul King as early as episode 28. I simply can't wait for that. But yeah, that's it, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you took something of value away from it as well. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without whom I simply wouldn't be able to do this. If you like what I do here over on YouTube and you too want to take that support from me another step further, thank you. By supporting me at the $1 tier, you can get your name in the credits of every episode just like this. And by supporting me at the $2 tier or higher, you can get every video I release absolutely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.